In 1860, the most expensive food found in a London market was not beef. It was not oysters. It was a vegetable that grew for free right on the beach. In Victorian England, a single basket of this plant sold for 9 pennies. That made it more expensive than a pound of steak. It was served at the Royal Pavilion by kings. It was cultivated by Thomas Jefferson at Monticello for 13 years. Yet it grew wild on every desolate, windswept beach from Scotland to the Black Sea. Sailors ate it to survive scurvy. Victorian gardeners built entire walled compounds just to grow it. It was considered the ultimate luxury, a vegetable so delicate, so nutty, and so complex that it made asparagus taste like grass. Then it vanished. Not because it went extinct. If you walk down a shingle beach in Sussex or Oregon today, you might still step on it. It vanished because of a fatal flaw. It is a vegetable that demands to be treated like an individual. It cannot be harvested by a combine harvester. It cannot be packed by a robot. And it rots within hours of being cut. In the 20th century, if you could not mechanize it, you could not sell it. This is the story of sea kale, the Victorian delicacy that industrial agriculture abandoned because it was simply too much trouble. The history opens in 1731 on the brutal, rocky coast of Sussex, England. A botanist named Philip Miller published his Gardener's Dictionary. In it, he documented a curious custom. He watched local villagers walking out onto the shingle beaches in early spring, digging into the piles of stones with their bare hands. They were hunting for white, tender shoots emerging from deep underground root crowns. They called it sea colewort, the ancient crumb. Miller wrote that when cooked, these shoots rivaled artichokes in flavor, but he did not discover it. The locals had been eating it for centuries. Archaeological evidence suggests Neolithic people were roasting it alongside seaweed on campfires thousands of years ago. By Roman times, it was recognized as a delicacy. Barrels of it were pickled for long voyages. But in 1731, nobody was farming it. They were just taking what the ocean gave them. That changed in 1799. William Curtis, another British botanist, published a pamphlet that changed food history. The title was dry, Directions for the Culture of Cram Maritima. But the contents were revolutionary. Curtis realized something profound about this plant. In the wild, the shoots push up through feet of heavy beach stones. The stones block the light. The plant struggles to reach the surface. And in that struggle, the stems grow long, pale, and crisp. Curtis realized you could mimic the beach. He told gardeners to cover the emerging shoots with clay pots in early spring. Total darkness. The lack of light forces the plant. It stretches. It panics. It pours all its sugar into the stems to grow faster. The result is a vegetable that tastes like a cross between asparagus and hazelnuts, with a texture like crisp celery. Suddenly, sea kale wasn't just peasant food, it was the pride of the British Empire. This is cram maritima, sea kale, the perennial that fed sailors, graced royal tables, and grew wild on beaches where nothing else could survive. To understand why this plant is so special, you have to look at where it lives. Sea kale is a halophyte. That means it loves salt. Most plants die if you pour salt water on them. Sea kale drinks it. It grows on shingle beaches, places that are barely land at all, just piles of moving rocks, sand, and constant freezing salt spray. These are environments where almost nothing else will grow. But sea kale doesn't just survive there. It dominates. On the coasts of Sweden, Finland, and Estonia, it is the dominant plant species. When the wind blows sand across the beach, the thick clumps of sea kale trap it, actually forming the foundation of sand dunes. It is built like a tank. It has a deep taproot that drills down through the stones to find fresh water. Its leaves are thick, rubbery, and blue-green, covered in a waxy bloom that sheds salt like a raincoat. Its seeds are corky and buoyant. They can float in the ocean for months, surfing the waves to colonize new beaches. It is a perennial. You plant it once and it feeds you for 10, 12, maybe 20 years. You can eat almost every part of it. The young shoots come in spring. The leaves in summer are like a salty kale. The flower heads bloom like purple broccoli. Even the roots can be roasted like parsnips. But the Victorians did not care about the roots. They wanted the shoots. By the mid-1800s, sea kale mania hit Britain. Market gardens along the coast dedicated acres to it. Street sellers, the famous costermongers, were shouting fresh sea kale in the foggy London mornings. Covent Garden Market stocked it. Mrs. Beeton, the goddess of Victorian domestic life, listed it as a kitchen staple. But it was expensive, 9 pennies a basket. To put that in context, asparagus cost 6 pennies. A pound of beef cost 8 pennies. Sea kale was one of the most expensive vegetables you could buy. Why? Because growing it was an act of torture for the gardener. Imagine the process. You plant the crown. You wait 3 years for it to mature. 3 years of weeding and waiting before you get a single bite. Then every spring, you have to go out into the field and place a heavy terracotta forcing pot about 18 inches tall over every single plant. We are talking thousands of pots, all moved by hand. You wait 2 or 3 weeks, you check under the lid. Is it ready? Is it perfectly ivory white? If yes, you cut it. If no, you wait. After the harvest, you have to remove thousands of pots so the plant can recharge in the sun for the next year. It was agriculture by hand. Every stem was personal, and for a while that was fine. Wealthy estates had armies of gardeners. Labor was cheap. The flavor was worth it. Thomas Jefferson was obsessed with it. His garden calendar from 1815 shows him harvesting it at Monticello every April for 13 years. Prince Regent George IV served it at his seaside palace in Brighton. It was the ultimate status symbol. It showed you had the patience, the land, and the staff to force nature to your will. But the world was turning, and the machine age was coming. The late 19th century broke the system. Walled gardens became too expensive to run. Labor costs skyrocketed, and a new kind of farming took over: industrial agriculture. The new rules of food were simple. Can you plant it with a tractor? Can you harvest it with a machine? Can you ship it 500 miles in a truck? Sea kale failed every single test. You could not mechanize the pots. A tractor cannot gently lift a terracotta lid. You could not mechanize the harvest. The shoots bruise if you look at them wrong. And worst of all, shelf life. Once you cut a sea kale shoot, the clock starts. You have hours, maybe a day. After that, it wilts. It loses its sweetness. You cannot put sea kale on a train from Sussex to Scotland and expect it to look good when it arrives. Compare that to asparagus. Asparagus is tough. You can bundle it, crate it, ship it, and it stays crunchy for a week. So the market made a choice. It chose the vegetable that survived the truck, not the one that tasted the best. Asparagus won, sea kale disappeared, and there was another tragedy happening in the background. The wild plants were vanishing too. Victorian demand had been so high that foragers stripped the beaches. They did not just cut the shoots. They dug up entire root crowns to sell to private gardens. Entire colonies that had existed since By the time the British government banned wild harvesting in the early 1900s, it was too late. The damage was done. By 2000, there was virtually no commercial sea kale production left in Britain or France. The vegetable that once cost more than beef was extinct from the menu. Even today, wild sea kale populations have not recovered. In Northern Ireland, it is confined to a single colony. In much of its historical range across Britain and Ireland, it has become uncommon. It is listed on the Wildlife and Countryside Act as a species that should not be harvested from the wild. Not because it is rare globally, but because humans nearly destroyed it through overexploitation. So what did we lose when we traded sea kale for asparagus? We lost a nutritional powerhouse. Sailors knew this intuitively. Sea kale is packed with vitamin C. A single serving has as much as citrus and far more than most greens. It stopped scurvy dead in its tracks. It is loaded with vitamin K for bone health. It has more potassium than asparagus. Like its cousins in the Brassicaceae family, such as kale, broccoli, and cabbage, it is full of glucosinolates. These are the sulfur compounds that give it that bite. Modern science links them to powerful anti-cancer properties. We had a plant that grew for free on land that could not be used for farming on beaches. It required no fertilizer, no pesticides, and no fresh water. And we replaced it with a crop that needs prime soil, heavy irrigation, and international shipping. It makes no sense unless you are... But nature is patient. In the last decade, something shifted. Chefs started looking backward. The foraging movement exploded. People wanted food that tasted like a specific place, and sea kale is the ultimate taste of the coast. Today you can find it again. It's rare. It's expensive, sometimes $20 a pound in London markets, but it's there. In the United States, it has weirdly naturalized on the West Coast. If you go to old lighthouses in Oregon or California, you might see it growing wild near the keeper cottages. The keepers planted it 100 years ago because it was the only vegetable that could survive the salt spray. The keepers are gone. The plants remain. It has even become a landscaping plant. You can see it in Brooklyn Bridge Park in New York, planted alongside grasses and daisies for its beautiful white flowers. Most people walk right past it, having no idea they are looking at a lost culinary treasure. Sea kale is a reminder. It reminds us that efficiency is not the only metric that matters. Industrial agriculture abandoned this plant because it refused to cooperate. It demanded hand labor. It demanded patience. It demanded respect. But those are the exact qualities that make food meaningful. We build a food system designed for trucks, not for taste. We optimize for shelf life, not for life. But the plant did not change. It is still out there, sitting on the shingle, waiting for us to remember that the best things in life cannot be mechanized. Some vegetables are worth the trouble. If this story changed the way you look at the wild plants along the shore, please subscribe and like the video. We are uncovering the history that the modern world tried to bury. Let's cultivate a better future together. The next treasure from the vault will be revealed soon.